Hello there, and welcome to the Family Federation True Love Seminar. My name is Andy Compton, and it's my great joy to be able to share this content with you. One reason is that it's had such an amazing impact on my personal life, but also, I found real confidence that people's heart can change, right? And therefore the world can change. But even more than that, I'm excited because what we're going to learn in this seminar is that we are living at an amazing time in human history. It's like living on the earth at the same time as Jesus. Except this time, instead of being God's only begotten Son, we are living at the time of God's only begotten daughter. So I'm going to explain more about that. But for now, let's get started with our introduction. Love is an important topic for just about everyone. The reason is we all want to be happy, and love is the source of our greatest happiness. Reflect on your life for just a moment and consider, when were you the most happy? When you think back, I bet your thoughts go to those moments when you felt that you were loved, or when you were able to truly love another person. But as we will learn, true love is not an easy thing. I wish I could say that this seminar is going to offer you a shortcut to true love. But I'm sorry, there's no such shortcut. Common sense tells us that we will be happy if we get what we want, right? But love doesn't work like that. According to the principles of true love, when you try to take love for yourself, you will end up losing it. But if you're willing to give your love away to others, you will gain even more love. This is why we find happiness when we actively love other people. This is consistent with the teachings of Jesus. In Luke 17:33, he taught, if you seek to gain your life, you'll lose it. But if you're willing to lose your life, you will gain it. In other words, when it comes to love, if your focus is on making yourself happy, it doesn't work. We find the same message in an old Chinese fable. There was a man who was shown both heaven and hell. They were exactly the same. Each had a banquet table covered with the best foods in all the world. And in each place, people were free to eat whatever they desired. The odd thing was, though, that in both places, the only utensils that they could use were these really long chopsticks. So, in hell, everybody was miserable because everyone was eager to, use their chopsticks to snatch the food that they wanted for themselves. But sadly, they had no way to get it into their mouths. In heaven, everything was the same, except that people were using their chopsticks to feed their loved ones the foods that they knew they would enjoy. So it was a place of great happiness. And it's not just Bible passages or old fables. This perspective is backed by scientific research. Dr. Michael Norton gave a TED Talk on how money can buy happiness. It was part of a study that gave people money. Half of them were told to spend it on themselves, and the other half were told to spend it on someone else. At the end of the day, those who spent their money on others were measurably more happy. If you'd like to learn more about this, please check it out, this TED Talk. Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who together with his wife, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, are the founders of the Family Federation, the organization that's sponsoring this seminar, they define true love in a similar way. They said, true love is to live for the sake of others. All right, we've been talking about true love and finding happiness. The place in which we're able to realize the love and happiness that we long for is what we're going to call my dream. We call it my dream because for the moment that's what it is. It's a dream. It's not the real situation of our lives or the world. My dream will be the first topic of this seminar. It's going to cover questions like, if we could live up to our full potential, right, to practice true love in our lives, what kind of life would that be? And what kind of community and nation and world would we be living in? My dream will also look at our long-term destiny and offer an answer to the question, do we have a spiritual life that will continue beyond our physical death? And perhaps most importantly, it will take a fresh look at questions regarding God. Does God exist? Is there an ultimate origin that gives purpose to our lives? The second topic of this seminar is entitled Human Responsibility. When we look around us at the real world, instead of seeing the fulfillment of a dream, we see a nightmare. We see conflict, pain, injustice, and a lot of unhappy people. At some point, our ancestors failed to fulfill the human responsibility when it comes to love. Instead of choosing the path of true love, they pursued the path of self-centered love. Under this topic, we'll look at the question of good and evil. What is the origin of evil? And why is it that people can't stop pursuing the path of self-centered love? We can find evidence of both my dream and what we are calling, this self-centered love, or we'll call it fallen nature, in each of us. We all possess an original nature that seeks my dream, to be truly happy through true love. And we each have another nature that seeks happiness through selfish love, but ends up only finding unhappiness. These two natures are constantly at war within us. Here's a simple example. When you've eaten your piece of cake, and there's just one piece left, and you know it's meant for your sister, but you really want to eat it, right? Then what happens? In your mind, there is one voice that says, don't touch. It's your sister's. But there's another voice, our fallen nature, that creates a justification for taking and eating the cake. Something like, my sister, she's kind of overweight. I'll be doing her a favor if I eat it. Or another example, we tend to be hypocritical. We hold high standards for others and often judge them when they act selfishly. But when we think no one is watching, we often behave in the same manner, or sometimes even worse. This contradiction in human nature has led to great suffering. We have families in crisis, drug and alcohol addiction, crime and corruption, racial injustice, violence, hunger, poverty. Our environment is endangered by pollution, and conflict and wars never seem to stop. We live in a world that is far from the ideal that it could be, and it's all connected in one way or another to our pursuit of self-centered love. The third topic we will cover in this seminar is restoration. It is based on the first two topics. So if, number one, we know where we want to go, meaning if we know clearly the content of my dream, and number two, if we understand human responsibility and the bad choices we've made that have blocked us from achieving my dream, then it will become clear what needs to be done to fix the situation. Doesn't that make sense? So once again, if you know where you want to go, and if you know what obstacles are preventing you from getting there, then you can begin to figure out what needs to be done to overcome those obstacles and to finally get to where you want to go. And please keep in mind, restoration is not only about the theory or of the process of how to do this. It's a study of human history, revealing how that process has been unfolding in the lives of people, all the way up to the present. For this reason, for many, this part of our seminar is the most exciting part. So these are the three main topics we will cover: my dream, human responsibility, and restoration. One purpose of this seminar is to present a new expression of truth. Truth is really critical. That's because nothing can be achieved through ignorance. Without knowing certain truths, could you bake a loaf of bread? Could you build a house? Could you build a spacecraft and land on the moon? Could you perform a heart transplant? Could you fix your car? Without knowing the relevant truths, none of us would be able to accomplish anything. In the same way, without knowing certain truths, my dream will never become a reality. When the truth is clearly understood, it gives us the power and confidence we need to accomplish our goals. All right, so there are two basic kinds of truth. There's internal truth and there's external truth. External truth seeks to explain the physical world and how we do things, like baking a loaf of bread or fixing your car. This truth focuses more on our intellect. The effort to reveal the external truth has been the job of science. But when it comes to truth, the problem is not so much with external truth, right? As for baking a loaf of bread or landing on the moon, we can do those things pretty well. The problem is with the internal truth. We need to figure out how to fix our hearts. We need to understand how to love and care for one another so that everyone gets the bread they need. And we need to figure out what it is within us that makes it so difficult to love one another. To find the answer to these more internal questions has been the goal of religion. Now, let's take a look at how these two aspects of the truth have developed. In terms of science and external truth, for most of human history, we have lived in ignorance. But in recent history, that has changed dramatically. Today, we are living in a world in which science has made huge advances. For example, technology, such as what we experience through modern computers and through our smartphones. Technology has changed the world, making it possible for humanity to live more efficiently and more productively. And it's improved our ability to communicate, making it possible for people all around the world to come together and become one global family. It's truly amazing. But there's a problem, and that problem does not come from science. It comes from the lack of development of the human spirit. Internal truth, which has been the focus of religion, is lagging behind. Think about it. We have enough resources for everyone in the world to live comfortable lives, and yet people's greed prevents that from happening. Some aspect of the internal truth is missing. With this in mind, let's take a look at the development of internal truth. For many thousands of years, primitive humanity lived in ignorance. We worshiped many different gods and idols. We worshiped mountains, the sun, the moon, stone statues, and so on. During this time, rituals that included human sacrifices were not uncommon. This changed when God called on Abraham and then Moses. Abraham is sometimes referred to as the father of faith. His connection to God was the beginning point of three major religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Moses is well known for receiving the 10 Commandments. This truth elevated humanity to a new level. It taught that there is one God, and it taught us such laws as "thou shalt not kill," which helped to bring an end to the practice of offering human sacrifices. After Abraham, for the next 2,000 years, God inspired prophets to speak his words to the people. The words they spoke, along with Moses' 10 Commandments, they were put together and recorded in what is called the Hebrew Scripture. They make up the first part of the Bible, which is known as the Old Testament. The next attempt by God to reveal his internal truth centered on Jesus. Although Jesus recognized and acknowledged the Old Testament, his aim was to raise people up further by revealing a higher truth. So here's one example. In Matthew chapter 5:21, in what is known as the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus mentioned Moses' words, "Thou shalt not kill." And then he took that law a step further and taught that even if a person did not kill, if they felt hatred towards a person in their heart, they would be guilty of sin. In this way, Jesus gave the people a higher spiritual truth. Jesus' teachings and the teachings of his disciples make up the second part of the Bible, what is called the New Testament. The sad thing is that Jesus was not able to reveal all the truth that he wanted to share. This is because he was rejected and eventually crucified. Let's read his words in John 16:12. I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. This explains why. Even though people's lives were lifted up to a certain degree through Jesus' life, through his sacrificial love, and through his words, Christians did not understand God or Jesus well enough to fully put God's truth into practice. We find evidence of this lack of truth in the next 2,000-year course. During this time, Western culture, centered on Christianity, would make many mistakes. A few examples are the slave trade, the unjust treatment of the colonized native peoples, and countless wars. Clearly, something is missing when it comes to the internal truth. This is why today a new expression of truth, one that is higher and more complete, is so desperately needed. People of good conscience, those who sincerely want to make the world better, should be anxiously looking for this missing truth. Think, although it is important that we respect and appreciate the religions of the world for all the good that they have done, does anyone really believe that the religions of the world, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, or any other religion, is on the verge of solving the world's problems? And if we could just give them, another 30 or 50 years, that they would be able to get the job done? I don't think so. They've been working on the problem for thousands of years. Another 50 years, I don't think it's going to make a difference. In fact, today, religions are in decline. Things are actually getting worse instead of better. Does that mean there's no hope? No, not at all. What it means is that some aspect of the truth is missing. There's something we have not yet figured out. And this is why Jesus appeared to Reverend Moon, whom we will affectionately refer to as Father Moon. Jesus called on Father Moon to continue the work that Jesus had begun and reveal the truth that Jesus was unable to reveal. This happened on Easter morning, 1935, when the young Father Moon, who was just 15 years at the time, had been praying in tears all night on a Korean mountain top near his family's farm. He was seeking God's guidance. After his experience with Jesus, Father Moon devoted himself to the mission Jesus gave him. Through prayer and many spiritual battles, including being arrested and tortured by the communists in North Korea, he received God's new revelation. The truth that was revealed to him is called the divine principle. Its content presents a fuller understanding of God, God's will, and God's work through history. By clarifying many of the unanswered questions contained in the Bible, the divine principle seeks to empower people of faith to end their division over theology and enable them to come together in support of God's work at this time in history. But the divine principle is not God's final truth. The divine principle itself states, the words proclaimed on these pages are only a portion of the truth. The most current and most relevant truth that reveals God's heart and God's plan for this time in which we are living is to be found in the words of Dr. Hak Jahan Moon. After her husband, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, passed on to the spiritual world in 2012, she began to reveal the content that will finally enable humanity to realize the dream we've all been seeking. Her message is a foundational material for the content that you will be hearing in this True Love seminar. If you would like to learn more about Mother Moon's message, a good place to begin would be to read her memoir, Mother of Peace. Mother Moon's experience and discovery of God's truth was quite different from Father Moon's. She was not called by God to fulfill an unfinished work, and she did not go through a spiritual battle to arrive at her knowledge of God. From her birth, she has known God as her Heavenly Father. just as Jesus knew God as his Father and was able to teach the elders in the temple at just the age of 12, Mother Moon also knew God as her Father and intuitively knew God's truth. Here's a quote from Mother Moon's memoir. "I knew that God was my Father, that he was my reason for being alive, and that he was always right there by my side, taking care of me. I sensed that God was my real parent from the moment of my birth." In this seminar, with the help of the truth that Mother Moon has revealed, especially concerning God's heart, we will be looking at portions of the divine principle, and we will be making references to the Old and New Testament scriptures that are found in the Bible. We will conclude this session here. In the next session, we will look at our first topic, my dream. So I look forward to seeing you then. Please keep well.